So, welcome to the podcast. Well, it's that time of year again. It's kind of obligatory now at this time. Welcome back to Bob Worrall. How are you, Bob?
I'm doing fine, Reb, uh, as well as can be expected this time of year with everything that's going on.
That's it, indeed. Well, with the pandemic and everything, it's had a terrible effect over this past year. I know as we were chatting in 2021, we were hopeful that we would be back on the grass again for
Yeah.
2021. I mean, and dates were in the calendar. We were all gearing up for things, and the year turned out as it turned out. Yeah. How was your year, the 2021?
I got through it.
Mm,
Kept myself busy. I like to be busy. I don't handle life very well if I'm not busy.
mm,
And and I think if you talk about people in terms of a continuum of how much of a social animal, from someone who likes to be alone all the time and they're not that fussy on people, to the other end of the continuum, I'm over here.
yeah.
So the isolation is tough for me.
Mm,
Not afraid to admit that, um, but kept myself quite busy. There were so many things that kind of came flying my way. Would you write an article for this? Would you judge a tune composition contest and online competitions and
yeah.
everything? I tallied it up the other day, and I think not just events, but actual full competitions. It was during the pandemic adjudicated around 30 of these.
Oh,
And
wow. That's a
yeah,
lot. Yeah.
and on all different continents.
Mm,
And it's fun too. As time went on, the quality of the recordings, people got better at it.
yeah.
And there's certain things that you have to, I think, overlook, um,
Mm,
given the recordings and everything else. It kept the younger up and coming players motivated. Some of
certainly.
the seasoned veterans and that, some chose to participate in it, some chose not, and I understand from both sides, because I
Mm,
don't know if I were competing, if I would have been involved in the competitions or not. Maybe depends. Um, so that kept me busy, and then the George Sheriff contest, which we organized, we thought that would be live this year.
yeah.
Just with 5 American players, 5 Canadian, and border restrictions, we just couldn't. So we had to do that virtually,
Mm,
and it came off. It came off really well. And the playing standard was for the amateur players was really quite high. Um, so as I say, just staying busy. There no traveling. People say, "Oh, I like to get out and do a lot of gardening." And I said, "Well, another year that no weed was safe in the
no.
garden." you know.
That's it. No prisoners yeah, indeed. Yeah. So can I ask you then, obviously Glenfedec happened
Mhm.
this year and you talk about one heck of an event. I was glued. And then the fact that we could actually go back and watch it again for a
Mhm.
whole week after it happened, I have to admit, I watched it like 4 or 5 times now.
Mhm.
So can I ask you then, what was it like to be there in person?
Well, I know they had restrictions as to how many people could be in the castle. They had
Mm,
that restriction, and so they had sold those in advance, and then they had a number of tickets that they could sell at the door, which
yeah.
would take them not to full capacity because they weren't allowed full capacity, but
Mm,
they sold all those tickets. So in essence, what they were allowed, they sold out.
yeah.
Um, so there was a really good audience there, and as you know, it's a very knowledgeable audience.
Mm,
And one thing I have to tell you, I hadn't thought about is when you walk out there, grab the microphone. I hadn't thought about what I'm going to say at the start. It just,
really?
I, I,
Wow.
I talked about, the usual, you're welcoming people to blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Mm,
and, just the usual banter. And but then what do you say just to kick it off? And I walked out and I took a look, and here's this huge audience with huge smiles on their face. Everyone was smiling.
yeah. I noticed that on
and
camera.
and all I could say, I think it was something like "Welcome back," um, and we had a contest, which was postponed, an outdoor contest here in Ontario at the Cobourg Highland Games. Usually they go earlier June, I think, and they
Mm,
didn't want to cancel. All the others that canceled, they put a placeholder date in for September the 11th, and they went, and it was a great day. And the same thing, I had never seen so many smiling faces at an outdoor contest. Just people getting together again, and after a couple of years at the Glenfedec, being able to see great friends, who are playing, who are in the audience, and just be there with friends. It was absolutely terrific. And then a few days after, because of the PCR test we have to have before coming back into Canada, 72 hours, no more than that. So I thought, can't fly back right after the Glenfedec. So we arranged to come back on Thursday. So I had the test on the Monday downtown Glasgow, and back came the results, negative as expected. And
there you are, and then safely home again. So can I? That's one of the things I've noticed from the little events that we've managed to have, with Glenfedec being the biggest. I think on the piping scene, that the overwhelming feeling is that it's not the competition, it's the fact that we're able to play again and be together. And that's exactly what you've said there. There is a real joy to it, Bob, I think this past year that people have found.
Yeah, I think, and that's maybe one of the positive sides of all of this. I think with a bit of a taste of it, the Glenfedec and a couple other things, we've begun to realize that it's way more than the competition.
Yeah,
it's the camaraderie and everything else. And as we know, that with the internet and how we communicate, and whether it's WhatsApp or FaceTime, all of the various modes of communicating these days, our community is very, very tight knit.
Oh, definitely.
Across bands, across countries, between countries, across continents, and everything. And when we all can finally get together at a World Pipe Band Championship, it's going to be interesting to keep people focused on their music rather than, how you doing? Haven't seen you. All this kind of stuff. Stop it. Focus.
Exactly. Yeah. Come on, we have an MSR to do here.
Absolutely.
And we say this hundreds of times on the show, that we are a piping family. We may well compete and bicker with each other, but essentially we are all one big loving family. That we're in this together for the same reason, and that's the love of the music. So now I can't wait for the world. And if anything, that brings me neatly on to my next question. In the mail this last couple of days, I managed to get a copy of Piping Times, which is a fantastic publication, by the way, by the National Piping Centre. If you haven't got a copy of this yet, go to the website now and order it. But Bob, you've an article in here, actually, which talks about this incoming season for 2022. And you say that it's going to be a watershed year for pipe bands. And what do you mean by that?
I think they're going to be a lot of things we've come to. Let's assume it happens, okay?
Yeah.
Touch wood.
Touch wood.
The international part of that, the whole fabric of the day at the Worlds, I don't think it's going to be quite the same. I don't think you'll see as much international participation for a wide variety of reasons. For the most part related to COVID and travel restrictions and people's concerns and safety and all of that. There are a lot of people thinking that there'd be people kind of walking away maybe from bands for a bit, because they've had a couple of years where I really got into my golf game or fishing or the garden or family, or I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. Now I'm married and I've got a young child or two young children, and the focus changes. And I think that might be the case. But I think there might be some partners who are saying after 2 years, say, "Oh, I want to just stay home with the family," and the partner might be saying, "Get off, go." We all need our space, and we all need what contributes to us as a full human being. So I don't think it's going to be as significant as that. And some people are saying the band numbers might be a bit lower, but if we take a look, we've had 2 years of people graduating, let's say, from the conservatoire.
And
these players are terrific.
Oh, incredible.
And they can walk into some of them already are, where before but
Mm.
there are others that could walk into any grade one band, drop of a hat.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think you might see. I think that I'm trying to think back. It might have been one of my predictions in the article that the average age in the top elite bands, I think it might be a bit lower.
I think you could be right there. With bands such as Bog Hall and Shots, with a lot of young members coming through, and I dare say you're correct there. Yeah. So I don't know. There seems to be a real hunger, especially with us on the Rab Show. We see a lot of the messages coming back and forth from people who are just itching to get back onto the grass again. So
Mhm.
I really hope that 2022 will be a bumper year for bands for sure.
Yeah, I really think I think I mentioned to someone, and I don't know if I put this in the article, that if it'd be interesting to have some data, and I don't think we could retrieve it. It would be maybe going back to the days of Strathclyde Police and saying to Ian McClellan, okay, when you were in your heyday, let's just list the players in the pipe corps and the drum corps. And around that time, how old were they approximately? Just kind of go down and average it out. And do that with some of the people who played in Shots during the heyday there with Tom McAllister, etc., and get a rough idea of the average age, and then project that through to the present day.
That would be interesting. Yeah,
really interesting. And along with that comes the creativity that is associated with the youth in these bands. Creativity that's great, but sometimes has to be tempered a little bit.
Yeah.
And but that's the other thing. If you take a look over the last 2 years, the creativity that has come forth in terms of publications of music.
Oh yeah, it's been second to none really. This past while, there's been so much new music presented. Yeah,
out of Australia, big new collections, fantastic collections. Out of Canada, new collections, fantastic music. Out of Ireland, terrific collection that Alan Tully put together. And then you take a look within Scotland. It's just, and I was thinking this morning about this before we did the interview here. Oh gosh, I bet we've got over the last 2 years about 20, that'd be a rough estimate, new publications of music.
Yeah, I think I could be right there. Yeah, definitely. It's been quite a prolific time, I suppose, over various lockdowns and stuff. It's give people opportunity now to look at, well, I've nothing else to do. I'll maybe write that tune down now.
Well, Bill Livingston and I just finished adjudicating a tune composition contest. The association here in Ontario is 75 years old.
Yes.
And so they had a tune composition contest sponsored in part by the association, but also Jim McGilvery with his Pipe Tunes website. That is a massive financial supporter for this. And so Bill and I were asked to adjudicate the 2-4 March contest. Was open to anyone globally. 42 compositions, 42 4-parted 2-4 marches.
That's crazy.
We had no idea who the composers were. We just got the manuscripts, and then Bill and I over the week or two just kept going back and forth and whittling our list down. And then there was a 4-4 contest that I think it's aimed at a tune that would commemorate the anniversary for the association, just open to people within our association as composers, and a tune that could be played mass bands, that kind of thing. And we had 17 tunes back yesterday. We just finished making our decision on the result of that one.
That's impressive.
It was great fun.
Yeah, that's
great fun to work.
Yeah,
great fun to work through that with Bill. We had great fun with it.
I'm sure. Yeah, it was. If anything, it's great to see that so many people are being so creative with the music now and writing all the time. It's only a positive thing, because I dare say that a lot of this new music will find its way to the piping scene, and band scene, and we'll hear a lot of new music, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Yeah. So, Bob, can I ask about your judging? You were talking about the various online events and things, and you talked about little pitfalls and stuff with technology and all the rest. How do you find judging an online competition? Do you find it easy or difficult?
Judging is difficult. it's work.
Full stop. Yeah.
It is work.
Yeah.
And there are things that in a live performance, if you're out in the field the day of the games, outdoors, and a young player is playing in front of you, and you're trying to get a read on drones or something, but there's an event just a few meters away, and pitch is different, and you're going, his or her drones, are they spot on? I can't. And you find yourself, because of interference, giving them the benefit of the doubt.
I see. Yes.
And the same thing here, you quite often have to give players the benefit of the doubt with certain situations. But as time went on, the latter contests where the recordings came in, you're expecting these players they've been doing a number of them, so they've kind of mastered the technology. They've got better microphones and everything else. So you're less inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt. It takes more time. Because you end up listening to the recordings, and whether it's one of these stewarded ones where they actually play live, they're given the time, all of that. I've done some of those too, or where they send in recorded performances, and at your leisure you go through them. Regardless, you end up doing rough notes, and then you go back and you put your comments onto a prescribed score sheet. So you also feel compelled, at least I do, to give, because you've got the time. Whereas it's not like you're adjudicating the Northern Meeting or the Argyllshire Gathering, and one player finishes and here comes the next one marching along.
Within 10, 20 seconds.
And at some of those contests, they're not getting an actual score sheet back. Which is another debatable item for sure. But because you've got the time, you feel you need to put a little more on there, and rather than a lot of short forms, you try to be a little more articulate in that. So they understand exactly what you're saying. So it takes more time, and I'd say at least double the time. At least double the time.
So, and I know from a competitor's point of view, it takes more time for them as well, because they would record it one run, they would listen it back and go, no, take 2, take 22, and they would play it, so many times until they are happy with it. So in a way, it's kind of similar then for judging, as you say, you're trying to be kind of really coherent in your language and take time over what you write. So yeah, I dare say it's a bit of a laborious task for both competitor and judge, but at the end of it, the end product is, that's what you're after,
Yeah, it's been a good motivator to keep people going, and my hat's off to the associations who have done this. I think it's terrific. Now, before COVID, I did an interesting one for the folks in Australia, and they said, we would love to be able to fly an outside adjudicator in, but it's a matter of expense.
Yes.
So what they proposed was they would do a live contest. The players introduced, there was an audience before COVID.
Yeah.
And Murray Blair, I think, was the person who recorded each of the performances, the live performances with the live audience and everything.
Yeah.
And edited out the tuning or the excessive tuning.
Yes.
And then I was forwarded the recordings with prescribed blank score sheets, and worked through it over a couple of days after the contest. And then the association officially announced the result the following week.
I see.
It allowed them access to an outside adjudicator. They just didn't get the result
that day.
On that day. So it's just another creative way of.
That's interesting. There's been so many different methods of doing this, I suppose. So yeah, it's been interesting to watch for sure. Now with 2022 on the horizon, I do again have dates in the calendar. Touch wood that we're going to happen. But do you think that the kind of online element will remain now that it's kind of been established over 2 years, or do you think that we'll scrap online competitions altogether?
I think it will remain. I think we're probably going to have some kind of a hybrid model where there'll be, of course, live in-person contests throughout the world, throughout the year. But I think some of the contests that ran that attracted players from all continents.
Yeah.
I think some of these contests will continue in a virtual fashion.
Yeah.
To attract that international component to some of these, in particular to the amateur events.
Yeah.
And even the summer school that we did here in Ontario this past year, initially we thought, oh, we'll do a live summer school, and then all of a sudden COVID. And the association had never run one. It always relied on other bands or organizations within the province to do summer schools. So we needed to, and this was Michael Gray came in as our new president, and he said, "We've got to do this. What do you think?" I said, "Couldn't agree more." And I still remember he said, "Well, I'm chatting with the chair of the music committee, Jim McGilvery, and we figured, given your background in education," I thought, "Oh no, here it comes. You're the one to organize this." So I said, "Okay, I will help facilitate that, but I need a team, and I need an IT literate team to surround us and everything." And the group we put together is terrific, instructors and the support people. But we opened it up globally. Fascinating. Yes. And we had students from East Coast to West Coast in Canada who would not have been able to fly in, the cost of flights, accommodation, everything. Yes. We had them from East Coast to West Coast in the US. We had one student from Germany.
Wow. Right. Wow. There you go.
So we've been talking about this coming summer, and we want to do it. And initially we were thinking, oh, this will be live. We won't have the same numbers because we had really big numbers. We won't have the same numbers piping and drumming wise because the flying in and the cost of all of that. But here comes a new variant, and
see, that's it. That's where we are now at the moment. You know,
we just deflate and we say, "Is a new variant now happening?" And you just feel like you're a balloon that's just going, not again. For God's sake.
Very much so. Yeah.
So maybe we'll be doing this one virtually again because we've got the model now. We know how to do it.
See, that's it. Yeah. A lot of folks are thinking that now that we've done these kind of things before, we know how they go. And, whereas before we were figuring it out, but now, but I dare say the in-person thing is definitely, that's where a lot of people want to go down for sure. Yeah. With a bit of luck. So can I ask you one final judging question, and then we'll get off of judging altogether? All these very serious judging questions. My goodness. I'm normally talking about cheese and driving tractors.
And pizza, right?
And pizza, exactly, yeah. So can I ask you that we had Rab Matheson on the show a while ago, and he was talking actually about judging ensemble and stuff. And he talked about how sometimes it's just not on the performance and how technically good it is, because at the top flight, we all know it's going to be technically good, but he talks about how a performance makes you feel as a judge when you're standing watching, a performance from a band. Is that it's that X factor that he mentions about? It's the feeling that it generates. Is that the same for yourself, Bob? Whenever you would be judging a performance at top flight, the same thing? Yeah,
absolutely.
There you go.
And it's funny, if you're the piping adjudicator, you feel that. You feel that energy and the emotive side of things just coming across to you, and you're dragged into that, just like a Hoover, just pulled into the music, and then still you have to evaluate some of the technical aspects.
Yes,
but they take a back seat, as they should, they should. And it'd be interesting, like you've got that musical impact factor, and then you've got this tonal and technical thing that you expect at that level to be givens.
Yes.
And if a band has a significant bump up on that, it can really tip your hat. It results in you tipping your hat toward that performance because it moved me.
Indeed.
And I find that you're sitting. It'll be interesting to see if if there is a Worlds and if the BBC covers it again, because I don't know at this point in time. A lot of things are up in the air. But when you're making summary comments on a band's performance, I think that our piping and drumming people out there expect me to say something in terms of sound and technique and everything else.
All of the technical stuff. Yeah.
That stuff is so obvious.
It is.
Like it is.
Yeah.
It's just so obvious to comment on. That's the easy bit, Well, you're talking about minor technical things at that level.
Yeah.
But to articulate the emotional impact that something has on you, and it might be just a minor tempo thing that just lacks some energy in those reels.
Yeah.
Or they went overboard a little bit and you feel unsettled. Whereas,
pushed it too far, possibly. Yeah.
But when they're in the groove, absolutely.
That's it. If anything, you've been famously quoted after some performances at the World Championships where you have nothing to say. When all you can say is just wow. It's those sound bites that folks absolutely love, because we're feeling it at home, and you feel the same, and it's just fantastic to hear. So has there been any performances like that that's been so memorable where you've been lost for words?
Yeah.
Any come to mind?
Yep. Oh boy, as you know, I have to be somewhat careful as an adjudicator, but
yes,
I'm taking my adjudicator's hat off and just listening in that booth with the headphones.
Yeah.
There have been, if I can go back, so a year or two before O'Toole won at the Worlds, and I forget where they placed that one year, but there was an emotional side to this performance that really moved me. I was in the booth, and I remember, they didn't win that year, but it really, really grabbed me. Now, what would I have done as an adjudicator? Maybe you're right beside the band and there's some tonal things or some technical things or whatever, but just as an audience member, it grabbed me. And I think it might have been the following year, a year after that they won. And let's face it, with the number of times that Field Marshal has won the Worlds, obviously there are some times there where, audience and, aficionados and non-aficionados are going, wow.
Indeed.
I think there was one of their performances in recent years where they finished, and I said, that's as good as it gets,
Yeah, that's the famous quote. Yeah.
And then there was, some musicality coming out of Inverary and a number of their recent performances. And where it really started to happen, and I think it was the Water is Wide or something they played, and Mike Cole from the US was guesting as their bass drummer, and they went into the air and the percussion line cut out with the exception of the bass coming in very subtle fashion, and then the tenors started voicing in, and then the full percussion came in. But it was that space.
Yes, that just nothing. Yeah.
That grabbed me, and I think more bands are utilizing space like that. And medley construction, and that Simon Fraser has improved dramatically over the last few years. And their last performances at the Worlds, I think people went, "Whoa, they're back
for sure,
they're definitely back." So, and the same thing since the new Ross took over in Bog Hall, the improvement that has happened in that band, like they're just all just chomping at the bit right now. And so and then there's that creative element, the creative element that Chris Armstrong has brought to Scottish Power, that a number of those medleys in recent years have really had people going, whoa.
Yeah, they really stand out. Yeah, indeed.
That's different. So it'll be interesting to see what Chris is putting together now. And what O'Toole's putting together, what FM's putting together, Simon Fraser, they're doing their thing with great players in the band, and what Bogall's doing with lots of young players coming in there.
Yeah.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more.
Oh, that's it. With a new PM at Fife Police as well, a whole new musical direction.
Yes.
And there's so many other bands in that grade that we could be watching with big interest this incoming season. But I love the way you mentioned that, less is more, because in our conversation with Rob Matheson, he mentioned it too. Sometimes less is more. And in order to create that crescendo, you need silence to get to the climax kind of thing. So, yeah, I dare say we'll see a lot of musical voices, I suppose, in bands going forward.
If I can deviate just for a second, a really funny thing happened yesterday. A young lad that I just started teaching, and his father, older fellow right now, who's got back into his pipes and that. So he came to retrieve his son after the lesson. Yeah. And he said, and he was away from it for a number of years. And he said, I was looking online. And he says, and I found this interesting clip. And I thought, wow. He said, it was a guy playing bagpipes with a cowboy hat on.
Right.
And he said, wow. He said, I always knew that they had some really good players in the United States, but this guy's terrific. Why? I've never heard an American player play that well. That's just on the light music. It's just fantastic and really exciting, etc. And at the end, it was like, well, you've just been listening to the former pipe major of Shots and Dykehead.
Oh, wow.
And it was Rab himself with a big cowboy hat on.
Oh, fantastic. There you go. Well, I have to ask you then, Bob, obviously, this now being 29th of December, we're rolling forward into New Year's. What are your hopes then for this incoming year, for 2022?
Oh, well, obviously, I hope we have in-person live pipe band competitions.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm hoping we have a full slate of solo events at the Argyllshire Gathering and the Northern Meeting Inverness.
Yes.
I hope in our own circuit here in Ontario that we can have a full slate of competitions. From a super selfish standpoint, I hope that this new variant doesn't make life even more difficult for travel, because I really want to come over for about 5 days to Celtic Connections.
Oh, now you're talking. Yeah, it's going to be a great festival this year.
Done it for many, many years and love coming over. No responsibilities. Get myself a hotel room, go out with friends for supper, a couple of drinks, go to a concert in the afternoon, go to another one in the evening, and just fill my day up like that and just come back satiated with good music and friendship. So I'm hoping for that.
Fantastic.
I hope that we've lost people to the whole pandemic. I've lost piping and drumming friends to the pandemic. Not right here in Canada. We've been fortunate in that regard, but elsewhere, not so much. And I hope we all stay safe. I know the association, the Pipe Band Association in Scotland, is working hard now at trying to look at how to ensure safety, what kind of protocols need to be put in place for adjudicators, for bands, etc. So I know we had a judges meeting a couple of weeks ago and discussed this and put forth a lot of our concerns, our recommendations, and that. So I know the association's wrestling with all of those factors and everything right now.
It's got to be such a difficult issue to tackle, because not only do you have to keep the bands minimum and safe, but the spectators and the judges, like everyone involved in this. It's such a difficult thing to consider, So, but yeah, I'm quite in agreement with you. 2020 has been horrible. 2021, again, not quite as horrible as 2020, but still not great. But we are looking forward to 2022 with hope, I think, for sure.
But Rab, it's programs like your own and others that are keeping us all connected, and we're talking.
Yeah.
because it's been difficult. It's been difficult emotionally for people too.
It has.
And if you're going through difficult emotional times,
Mm.
you got to talk to people.
Sure.
You got to talk to people. You can't internalize it. You got to talk, and that's the only way to maintain our sanity through all of this.
Through all of it. Yeah.
I was chatting with a friend recently who he and his wife, dear friends for many years, and he lost his wife just a few weeks ago to ALS.
Oh dear.
And for her sake, it was not a super prolonged over many years. So it was relatively quick, but he's going through the grieving process, and we chatted at length on the phone. And he said it was funny that he says, I've lost track of time, and I'm trying to remember what happened. A certain event. When did that happen? Was it 2 months ago, or was it last year? And he said, I just couldn't.
You lose that sense of time.
Couldn't remember it. And then he says, I went to my doctor. He says, do I have dementia or something going on? The doctor said, no. He said, losing your sense of time is all part of the grieving process. And when he said that to me in the phone, I went, we've been going through this. Like I said, what month is this? What day
and I
think
it?
Because to a great extent, for the last 2 years, we've been grieving.
Oh,
so we got to talk. We got to talk. Got to talk to friends. Got to listen to this show, and got to have a giggle and put on stupid sweaters and have a dram.
Exactly. Well, we'll do what we can to continue talking until our Glengarry's, get threw up in the air again. That's the hope, anyway. So with that in mind, then, but before we leave you, I always kind of leave with Rab Show staples. We already know what your favorite cheese is and your most memorable moment, all that stuff. But can I ask you then about hobbies outside of piping, Bob? Do you read? Do you watch movies? Do you play golf?
No, God, me, my obsessive personality. I've never even picked up a golf club because I know what would happen.
Oh no,
I would. And it was like Ian McClellan when he retired from the police band and everything, and he got serious into golf. He was out there every day. I know that would happen to me, and nothing else would get done. Hobbies. I love gardening. I love digging in the dirt, and I could be out there from when the sun comes up, the sun goes down. My dad and I, when I was a kid, we used to go out late August, and we'd go to these milkweed patches and find the monarch butterfly caterpillars, and we'd set them up in jars and everything, and they would go through to the chrysalis stage of the monarch. So the last 2 years, been doing that like crazy. Maybe a bit overboard, but that's in that. I do read a lot. In fact, I tell you, a plug for Michael Gray's Notes.
Gray's Notes. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Is a gem. An absolute really is. Gem. And I had 25 pages to finish the day before yesterday, and I could have. And I thought, no. And I just set it down and said, I want to sit down with a cup of coffee and relax and just read the final installment. And the other thing, as a kid, we used to always in our home, in the wintertime, of course, as you know, we get a lot of snow, especially where I come from, where we get a lot more snow than here in the Toronto area. But we always had the card table was set up in the living room, and there was a puzzle.
I see. Yes.
Yep. We always had a puzzle on the go, and so I thought, Now, I would sit down with my mother and my father. He had no patience for it. He would come in, see a piece, and he would
try to jam it.
There you go. And my mother would just go, don't say a word, and she would pry it out and everything. And that was his one contribution, which was a total failure. And so got back into doing some puzzles last year. It was great fun. So I've got a whole stack of them all ready to go for this winter. And
excellent.
A bit of puzzle work, a bit of reading every day, some tunes in the bagpipe, a lot of private teaching right now.
Yeah.
The online teaching continues for distance learners, and as long as they're double vaxxed, the pupils can come into the house. But not double vaxxed, they don't step inside the front door. Absolutely not.
Oh, there you go. Well, Bob, I have to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. We really appreciate it. And I hope it's not another year until we actually get to chat again.
No, I want to see you this summer. I want to see you this summer.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I hope to see you on the grass here in Glasgow this year with a bit of luck. So again, I want to wish you and all of our listeners listening right now a very happy new year. And we'll see you all in 2022. Thank you.
And happy new year to you too.